Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me here today. That was really great to hear what PJ had to say and have kind of a different perspective on pricing. So I'm here today to talk to you about pricing. How many of you here love talking about app pricing? All right, you're my kind of people here. How many of you here are at least a little bit scared, maybe a little bit terrified of doing any changes to your pricing at all? All right, I see some hands there. I also see a lot of people not putting up your hands. That tells me you're either lying or you're in denial, right? Let's be honest about pricing here. Pricing is one of the scariest things you'll ever do with your app, especially if you're going to increase your prices or thinking about it. All along the way, you're going to be thinking, you know what, is my app good enough? Do I have enough features? Am I good enough, right? Am I going to change my prices and lose all of my customers? Are they going to look at my price point and laugh in my face? All right. We took a little bit of time to get over some of those fears. I'm going to tell you what helped us push over the edge, and then how we started from there, experimenting with pricing and making some sort of change to pricing every single year. There you go. All right. My name's Andrew. I'm the co-founder of Cleverific. We do self-serve order editing in the Shopify App Store. So if you're a customer for a brand and you make an order, and you might want to change the shipping address, or maybe you decided, hey, I ordered a medium, I should order a large, or some sort of change like that, you could do all that without contacting the brand's customer service team. All right, so we allow you to do that yourself. We started in the App Store about 10 years ago, so we're OGs. You might have known us by our old name, which was Edit Order by Cleverific. It does what it says on the box, right? These days, we're just called Cleverific. We started at a time where it was impossible to do any edits in the App Store. Some of you might remember this. We came up with a workaround for that, and then later on, we built full tooling for how to manage orders and make changes to those orders. We kind of thought of ourselves as, you know, where you might have a sharp tool in the future that Shopify builds this. We're going to give you like a chainsaw that you could slice and dice and order any way that you want to. Maybe sometimes you slice off your leg too, but you know, that's a story for another time there. As Shopify started building in these features, we were able to share a lot of our use cases with the dev advocates teams and then help shape the APIs that are present today. But I'm not here to talk about just how awesome our app is. It's very awesome. I'm here to talk to you about and tell you a story about our 10 years in the App Store and what we did as far as pricing to help get really tremendous growth out of that. Each one of these arrows that you see here on this chart represents a time that we did a major change to our pricing. And I'm going to tell you how we did that. And you might actually see yourself in some of the things that we've done here as well. In my conversations with founders over the last 10 years, what I've noticed is that we have all share very similar pricing journeys. And so maybe you could take something here away from what we've done over the past 10 years as inspiration and maybe speed run your way to success. All right. Let's go on the Wayback Machine here. This was 10 years ago on our website. Some of you might recognize this in yourselves. How many of you here have ever had a pricing page that looks like this? Or maybe it looks like this today. All right, I only saw 2 hands here, but everybody here should have your hands up, right? And because we've all started here, this is as simple as it possibly gets, right? You have one low price of $19 a month. Maybe, God forbid, it's $5 a month, right? But we all start here because we don't have that much data. You got to slap a price on it, get it out the door, ship, move forward, right? Let's talk about $5 a month here, right? If any of you here are charging less than, say, $19 a month, I want you to stand up. And then, don't stand up, actually. But then I want you to leave the room, and then don't come back till you've raised your prices, right? And here's why, right? If you're thinking about the target of like 10K MRR, right? And the difference between the cost or the number of customers that you need to get from 10K MRR to 10K MRR at $5 a month versus $29 a month is about an order of magnitude. It's a 10x difference, right? Here's how I could show you this, right? A lot of you here, some of you here could probably get up and run a 10K right now, be back in an hour, right? But none of us here are running 100K, right? Nobody's doing a back-to-back marathon right now. Going to come back, be here for the after party, right? That's a difference in effort that an order of magnitude takes. And so if we just do some of the simple math here, right? If you look at that, that's 10x, right? So don't do that to yourself. Give yourselves a little bit of a break here, right? So back to the story. We were doing this, and that was working out well for a little bit of time. And there I was in a conference. I was listening to a talk by Patrick McKenzie, and he basically spoke directly to me. It's like a light shined on me, and he was like saying, Andrew, you got to raise your prices. All right. He says, software companies, especially at the early stage, drastically undervalue themselves. Right. And so the very next day, I'm at the gate at the Las Vegas airport. I pull out my laptop. I Slack my co-founder, and then in 15 minutes, we've raised our prices from $19 a month to $29 a month, all just at the gate at the airport there. All right. What we did there is that we grandfathered in all of our existing users, so they just continue paying their same rate. And then all the new merchants that installed from the App Store, they get the new price. So at that point, it gets us to good, better, or best. Just talk before I get too far into that. It took us about a couple of months to start to figure out what the impacts of raising our prices were. But then at the end of the year, we're looking at our 12-month like P&L, and what it showed us is that we had a 40% increase in revenue over 12 months just from changing the prices like that, right? 40% is pretty good, right? Anybody here would like 40% year-over-year growth, right? It's not runaway growth, okay? But it's not bad, and it's a great general target to be looking for, right? One, if you just do the math, 40% year-over-year growth means that you double every 2 years, right? Not runaway again, but like pretty dang good, right? Two, if you're talking to a private equity company, or if you're looking for an exit sometime in the future, they're looking at between 30 to 40% year-over-year growth as kind of the minimum number for a good business to acquire, right? You could probably exit at a growth rate that's lower than that. However, you're not going to command like really great multiples of like say 3x to 5x unless you're hitting that type of annual growth. All right, so we get 40% year-over-year growth, right? Allows us to start to live the dream here. And the dream was to just have a product company. Prior to that, my co-founder and I had been doing kind of the mix of consulting works, dev projects while we were building this business. And then finally, we started to get some growth where, hey, we could go full-time into the business now. And that leads us to our next evolution. Our next evolution is good, better, best, right? Everybody's seen kind of this. You have, the low end, the standard, you go all the way to premium plus. This actually took us a couple of iterations here. Your good, better, best, you're going to be segmenting by plan, or your plans by like available features. What you're seeing here is a little bit later where we started to get into a value metric sort of thing, but we hadn't figured it out yet. But before I get too far ahead of myself, here's where it really the problem was, right? Our main value prop is order edits, right? And there we are just giving them away for, unlimited and for free here, right? Before we got there though, this was our first attempt at good, better, best. We had a standard plan. All we did was add a standard plus plan, right? And the difference is this one line right here, priority support, all right? It turns out that people will just pay more to be at the front of the line. So if you don't have a higher plan right now that offers priority support, I'm recommending that you do it right now, right? This is your lightning pass at Disneyland, right? If you do this today, I guarantee you'll have merchants signing up without even asking a question. The next attack that we had here was, we start to get a little fancier. We became a launch partner with Shopify Flow, where we had order editing automations that were running off of Shopify Flow. And so when we launched with that, at the time, Flow was only for Plus merchants. And so this is your classic. So we increased the prices for that so that we could, kind of attack that side of the market there. And this is your classic like feature demographic segmenting, right, that you're going to see. And then this is where eventually we ended up here, right? Good, better, best is great because it allows merchants to start to filter themselves or segment themselves into the prices that they're willing to pay for the features and the value that they want. But one thing when I look back at this pricing iteration that we had is that, again, our core value prop, order edits and payment requests, we had like pioneered a way to do send and accept payment requests within the Shopify limitations, and merchants were using the crap out of that, right? And we were basically giving it away for free, right? And so what I would recommend that is if you haven't moved to good, better, best kind of plan style yet and you're thinking about it, what you should do is you should be very careful about how you're going to be segmenting across your merchants. What we did is we cross-referenced our usage data, which is really easy now to collect in Mantle. And then we cross-reference that across estimated sizes and order volumes for each one of those merchants. And you could just draw like top 10% do this and use this. The next 20% looks like this. And that's how we kind of bucketed that. But the one thing that you should be very careful though of is that think twice before you offer anything that's unlimited, right? Especially if it's your primary value prop. Okay, so at some point you have good, better, best, and then you're like, oh no, Nike just called, right? Well, Nike didn't call us. Nike's not on Shopify, but we got a call from like a big Fortune 500, Fortune 100 level company, and they said, hey, we want everything plus the kitchen sink, and we want to see we want to do some custom dev with you as well, and then also our security team needs to review all your code. Right, I'm like, yeah, thanks, but no. And then they said, well, how about we do a contract? I said, okay, how about $20K? And they said, yes. I'm like, okay, crap. Well, now we have to do an enterprise plan, right? So now we have to get this going. We have to figure that out, like admin side legally on the back end there. But now it's like, oh yeah, actually, big companies want our stuff, and so I guess we should do this. And so we added this to our site. I couldn't find the way back version of this, but this is the one that we have on the site right now. Something that you might want to think about here for your enterprise plans is, do you want to have a custom development option there, right? The way we think about ourselves is that we're a product company, we're a SaaS company, right? We produce a product, and we don't want to be a dev shop. So, but my answer to should you provide some custom dev services is generally yes. The philosophy is yes, if they meet some specific criteria. That criteria for us is one, that the merchant is very, very serious about doing the project. This translates to our price for that. We generally try to price merchants out so they don't do that. And then two, you want to make sure that you are basically uniquely suited to do that project, right? Because otherwise they could go anywhere else to do that. And then now you'll have a big contract that's trying to yank you around from your product. So generally I say yes, but if you don't have the resources or you don't have the team size to absorb a project like that, don't start taking those on, especially in the early days. Next, we get to a value metric. Does everybody here know what a value metric is when I say that word? Okay, the phrase means a value metric is a quantified measure of the value that your product adds for the merchant. So you might think about this as a number of contacts that a merchant can have, number of campaigns that they can run, number of transactions per month, right? For us, it's order edits. All right. And the value metric is really the holy grail of where you kind of want to get to at some point. And the reason is that for merchants, you now have some sort of way for them to easily move up and down your pricing plans, right? And if every month as merchants are becoming more successful, they're using your app more and you're able to charge for that, you're going to get what we all want, which is expansion revenue. They're going to be able to expand into the higher and higher plans, right? And that leads us eventually to net negative revenue churn. Net negative revenue churn is the kind of phenomena where every month more merchants are expanding than they are contracting or churning out of your product. And that is what's really gonna be able to unleash like these hockey stick style curves, right? And so it wasn't until after we figured out, hey, how do we charge for the value metric? How do we set that up for merchants that we were able to really, really unlock that? So I want to talk to you about the difference between how our pricing plans work compared to, say, like the difference between usage-based pricing versus what we call like metered pricing, right? If you look at our plans here, they're like basically distinct good, better, best plans, right? But they have, they're kind of gated on these on order edits, right? The number of edits that you have in between. So we call that kind of a usage-based pricing. You go into a plan based on what usage that you're forecasting to need. That's great because it gives you a baseline and a floor for what customers will be paying you, right? And that's huge because it costs something to support them in the first place, right? I contrast this with meter pricing, which is more of like the pay-as-you-go or the pay per transaction model, kind of like say AWS, where you're paying per server hour or per gigabyte, right? If you're starting out or you're early on, or if you don't have like big, VC cash or something like that, you better be careful about that because your long tail of your lowest paid customers is going to be very long and they still cost you money to support. So if you're not very careful, you're going to end up on the wrong side of that cost equation. So this is essentially where we ended up here. And value-based pricing or the value metric-based pricing is really what we've been able to like get the next level of our growth out. So going to the last bit here. Over here is basically what our pricing page looks like today. We've eliminated our lowest plan, which used to be $29 a month. Now it's $49 a month. Everything's otherwise fairly stable there. What you don't see is that we also have a ton of shadow tiers and add-ons. So we work with merchants eventually to move them to types of plans that are just right for them. And we'll craft custom plans just to do that. And then use that to add customizations that they can't get anywhere else. And that helps them stay really sticky. And so that's how we've resulted in customer lifetime values of 5+ years. We've been around for 10 years. We have customers that have been with us the entire time as well. All right, so here's my favorite part of the whole talk. We're gonna get into tactics. So I've talked to you about how we've moved through our pricing evolution here, right? And what I'm gonna talk to you about next is, how do you execute on some of those things, right? What can you take away today in order to start making some of these changes? And so we'll do that. So first thing you gotta do is raise your prices, right? I'm the raise your prices guy. And I believe in it because it worked for us. Right? So definitely raise your prices. If you're charging anything less than like say $19 a month right now, I think you should raise your prices to at least $19 a month. Right? I love the plurality of opinions on this. You should definitely raise your prices to at least $19 a month. And when you do that, what you're going to want to do is grandfather your subscribers in, right? This is the exact email that we sent out, right? To grandfather our subscribers in. Okay. If you email me, I'll send this over to you, and just hit me up on LinkedIn or whatever. Okay. But what you're going to want to do in an email like this is tell them what you're going to do, right? Tell them what they have to do. In this case, if you're grandfathering your existing users, they don't have to do anything, right? But also you're going to want to tell them about how your product has been delivering value, and then how it's going to continue delivering value as well. Once you've grandfathered your subscribers in and increased your prices, you want to keep a sharp eye on your metrics, some key KPIs that's going to help tell you that, oh yeah, customers that are coming in now are actually valuing the product at its current price point. All right, these key metrics are going to be your trial sign-up rate, your trial to paid conversion rate, and your churn rate. Right? You're trying to get a read on whether or not customers are valuing your product by some of these numbers. There's great benchmarks out there, general benchmarks that you could just Google, or if you hit me up on LinkedIn, I could share those with you and tell you my thoughts on all of those, especially specifically for Shopify. The best way to the best way to track this is to use like an MRR cohort report, like what you're seeing here, which can tell you, which is a visualization that allows you to say, oh yeah, during this month, this change happened, and this is how it affected my retention over time. All right. I'm not sure if Mantle has this chart yet, but you guys do? Sweet. I don't know where it is in Mantle. This is a screenshot from a platform that we used to use called Profitwell. So, all right. So check out Mantle for that. That's great that they have that. All right. Once all those numbers look good, right, the next thing you want to do is kill your grandfathers. At Cleverific, we call this project Kill Grandfathers because what it involved doing is asking merchants to move from their grandfather plan to the updated plans. Once we had a good read on what all the trial data was, and we knew that, hey, merchants are sticking around at this new price point, we're like, great, we could charge up for the value on that. So what we did is we asked 1,400 merchants to say, hey, we're going to be willing to pay, instead of $19 a month, $29 a month, right? Should be fine, right? Unfortunately, that's a lot like herding cats, right? Maybe less like herding cats and it's more like herding lions because they kind of want to kill you at every step of the way, right? And then the Shopify billing system, especially with the recurring application charges, they're like bear traps, okay, that ensnare you along the way and turn you into lion food, right? And the reason being is because if any of you have worked around that, you've got to get merchants to go in and click a button to say, yes, please charge me more money for the same thing, right? These days, I would do that completely differently, but that's what you have to work with there. So this email is really going to help with that. And then, basically tell them what you're going to do, tell them what they have to do. In this case, please go in and click a button, right? And then overall, you can, like they have some time to take an action. You want to give like maybe 30, 60 days in order to do that. The result for us is that we had 1,400 plans that we were trying to move, right? Only a 10% attrition rate, which is pretty fantastic. A 40% acceptance rate and like a 50% meh, right? Some people are just like, I'm just going to ignore you until the very end, and then I'm going to ignore you some more, right? We all do that, right? I get those emails from the IRS as well. But what do we do with the merit rate, right? Like we had pop-ups going, we had banners going, but some people just don't want to take an action, right? Eventually, we don't want to lock people out of the app, especially if they depend on it, right? And so eventually we're just like, okay, we hear you, just don't do anything for now. And then later we followed up with another technique, which is called a legacy discount. A legacy discount is where you offer customers an incentive for being a longtime customer, for being loyal to you. In our case, it was, hey, keep paying your same rate as long as you accept the new rate, and we'll charge you the new rate 6 or 12 months later, right? Or we could offer you a 30 to 50% discount for the next 12 months if you accept the new rate, starting in 12 months from now. Now, you can't do this with a recurring application charge, right? At the time that we did this, it was a good number of years ago. Mantle wasn't even around yet, so it was just a glimmer in Jordan's eye. And we had to build out a system to do this ourselves. And it's basically usage-based charges and cron jobs, right? These days, we would just use Mantle's flex pricing to do that and make it so much easier. All right. This template up here is a template I got from Patrick McKenzie. He's the founder of that SAAS metrics company that I took a screenshot from earlier called Profitwell. A lot of great stuff from this guy on pricing. So I recommend that you follow him if you want to learn more here. Something that I cribbed directly from him on that was this line down here, right? This is your get out of jail free card, right? So in some cases, while we were moving to usage-based pricing, we weren't just asking customers to have a 3 to 5%, inflation increase or something on the price points. We had moved to a different pricing model that priced merchants or priced the plans based on their usage. So reasonably, right, you might say, well, somebody who's using you like 50 times a month, that's like once a day-ish or something. You could say, okay, that's the lowest plan, right? But what does a merchant pay you if they really depend on you for their day-to-day business. They're using you 30 times a day, 100 times a day, right? Usage is kind of off the charts there. And so we had all across that range increases from, 20 to 30%, maybe 50% to 100, 300, 1,000% increases in price, right? And how do merchants respond to that? Generally, they don't like that, right? But you could get around that with something like this. This is your free get out of jail free card, like I mentioned. What I did when somebody would reach out on via this message was I would schedule a Zoom call with them, and then my job was to talk about their business, understand their business economics, how they value our app, and then make them an appropriate offer, right? In practice, we really only got 10 or so calls about this, right? And every one of those merchants were able to accept an offer from us, and they're still with us today, right? So it says a lot about the effectiveness of something like this. All right, I just want to wrap up with, your pricing is always a work in progress, right? If you're out there and you're thinking about pricing, you should never think that it is the pricing that you have today is the one that you have to have forever, right? For the most part, as customers churn out, even if you have low churn rates, you don't remember what your pricing was anyway, and so you're always going to get somebody new to run pricing by, right? Experiment, find ways to get to a value metric that you can charge by, right? Not all businesses will make sense for a value metric, but you should be thinking about, hey, how do we create opportunities for expansion revenue? Number 3, we talked about raising prices and how to grandfather those existing merchants in, and then kill your grandfathers, right? And then finally, you can use legacy discounts to incentivize that action. Thanks for listening here today, guys. This is my contact information here. Reach out to me anytime. I'm an open book, and so I'll be happy to talk to you about pricing and dive deeper.